The hour convening having arrived, all members of this house will please report to the house and take your seats. All members of this house will please report to the floor of the house. The clerk will ring the bell. All members will please report to the floor of the house. We're going to now have the morning roll call. All members present will please vote green to signify their presence in the chamber, and the clerk will unlock the machines. Have all members voted? Have all members voted? If so, the clerk will lock the machines. Doorkeepers will please close the doors and keep them closed. Well, good morning. Hope everybody's feeling well today. We're going to begin our day with scripture reading and prayer by the chaplain, after which we will pledge allegiance to the flag of our country. Our chaplain this morning will be introduced by the gentleman from the 119th House District, Representative Marcus Wiedauer. Representative Wiedauer.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Good morning, colleagues. It's my honor to introduce to you my good friend, Reverend Jamie Scott. Jamie Scott is an ordained minister and serves the executive director at Sparrow's Nest Center in Athens, Georgia, which is a Christian center devoted to helping break incarceration and the poverty cycle. Jamie's not your average reverend. He was introduced to drugs, alcohol, and violence at a very young age, and those things took over his life. He was first arrested when he was 14 years old for stealing a car. Over the span of his life, he has been arrested over 50 times. While he was in jail, someone from prison ministry came to his cell and asked point blankly, "If you died tonight, where would you go?" When he was introduced to the Holy Spirit, his whole worldly perception changed. He started learning about God and the unconstitutional love the Lord has for everyone, which is how he became the amazing man he is today, who helps anyone and everyone who walks through the doors of the Sparrow's Nest. Y'all, I hope you get a chance to meet Jamie a little bit later. He is a dear friend and the type of individual that when you see him walking towards you, you just instantly, it does not matter what mood you are in, he will lift your spirits. And we look forward to having him today. Thank you for being here.
Good morning, everyone. I first and foremost want to start off by saying thank you, thank you, thank you, and thank you for the work that you do, for the way that you advocate, for the love that you have for this great state of Georgia. As I came in, and from the time of putting my belongings to go through the little scanner or whatever else, everyone greeted us with such hospitality. And all the way through. So I'm excited to be here before you today. I won't be before you too long. And I thought about, when I was praying about this, what do I want to say? How do I want to encourage our representatives, what would you have me to say, Lord? And I think the best message that I could ever preach is a message of salvation, of what the Lord has done for me and what he's brought me through. So my title today, and the verse that I'll be touching on, and kind of one of the verses is, and comes out of Psalms chapter 40, verse 2, that says, he lifted me up out of miry clay. You know, my life didn't always look like this. As a matter of fact, it was quite the opposite. However, personally, I believe my story couldn't have happened in a better place than America, the US of A, the land of opportunity, nor a better place than Georgia. That's my personal belief. I'm going to talk to you real briefly from 3 different timelines in my life, from the age of 5 to 10 and a half years old, from 10 and a half to 18, and 18 to 35. And I'll be most definitely looking at the time as we move forward. So I'm from Athens, Georgia, Bulldog country. I've seen a couple of my homeboys in here today, and I've seen a lot of people who had, after meeting them, cheering us on and saying, "Go Dogs." So go Dogs. All right. So I'm from Athens, Georgia, from a set of housing authority projects once known as Paldo. I witnessed my uncle get murdered in front of me in this neighborhood when I was 5, and my aunt was murdered over there as well. I was introduced to drugs and crimes at an early age, as Mr. Wiedauer was telling you guys, and to the best of my remembrance, I was around 6 when all these things happened. My uncle had a bootlegger's house, and if I danced really well, now I'm 51, so back then James Brown was popping, he was what was happening, right? And I did a split. How they would reward me was with a swallow of Schlitz malt liquor beer. That was my reward at the time. And out of ignorance, not holding that against my uncles or my relatives or whatever else, they thought that they was rewarding me, but they actually was taking me down a path that I would regret later on in my life. My father wasn't in the household. I remember there used to be some jump boots in the room that my brother and I shared, and whenever I would ask my mother whose they were, she would dodge the question. But finally, one day she told me, "They're your dad's," who I had never met but seen only on a tiny prison photo mugshot. I met him 18 years later, and I'll kind of let you people know, you guys and you ladies know how that came about. He was sent to prison when I was 6 months of age, and they gave him a sentence of concealed life. Concealed life is like life without parole. Back in the 70s, they called it a concealed life sentence. But I'm reminded, and one of the things that encouraged me as I approached life and I began to find out where my identity was, and which is in Christ Jesus, I'm reminded of Psalm 68 verse 5, and it says he's a father to the fatherless. So I held on to that as I began to fall more in love with Jesus Christ. He became my father. I never had a father really to model that for me. I had a stepfather, but that was very momentarily. So my mom, she had met my stepdad, who was stationed at the Navy base in Athens, Georgia, in the early 70s, before the University of Georgia bought him out. And they got married, and shortly they moved us to Yokohama, Japan. Now, that was a culture shock for me, ladies and gentlemen. I'm coming out the hood, I'm from inner city, and we're going to Yokohama, Japan. When my grandma said, you're going to Japan, one of the things that hit me, I was like, I wonder what she's going to cook today. We're going to Japan? I'm thinking she's going to put something literally in the pan, right? And we move over there, man. And we once we get over there, I knew a couple slang words I hadn't learned from my kin folks and up out of the neighborhood. So I'm speaking slang, they speaking yang. I'm looking at them like this, they looking at me like that, and we had a great time. So during my years of 10 and a half to 18, we moved from Japan over to New Jersey for a couple of years. That's where my parents divorced. And then we moved back to Athens momentarily and then migrated to Atlanta. That's where I first caught my first charge. I was incarcerated. I remember off Capitol Avenue, they used to have a juvenile that was over by the old stadium or whatever else, and I can still remember those days when I first got incarcerated. After I turned 15, I was incarcerated for a stolen car. So, after my first charge was burglary. My second charge was a stolen car. Around the same time, I began to get my first pistol. As I began to experience with cocaine, committing all types of crimes, going deeper into the streets. At 17 years of age, I was faced with 2 life sentences for some horrible offenses. I was accused of murder and armed robbery. I will never forget when I called home collect from out of the holding cell to my mom, and she picks up the phone and she says, okay, all right, where you at? And I told her I'm on Jefferson Street. That's before it became Wright Street, Fulton County Jail. And she says, okay, you done made it to the big house. What have you done? I said, well, Mama, these people are saying this and they saying that or whatever else. She said, well, let me tell you something. I don't have any money for an attorney. I don't have money to get you a lawyer or anything like that, son. What you're going to have to do is get on your knees and pray. You know, that was easier said than done. That was easier said than done to just get on my knees and pray. One day, an elderly guy came down the hallway passing out Bible tracts and ministered salvation by introducing me to this guy by the name of Jesus. I gave my life to Christ, which was a strange experience since my first couple of times ever going to church were to my relatives' funerals. My uncle, who got murdered over in that neighborhood of Paldo that I witnessed at the age of 5, and my auntie, who got poisoned at a bootlegger's house because, you know, story is, I don't know how true it is, that she was messing with the woman's husband at the bootlegger's house. But you know what? Even though I wasn't raised in church, there was no depth, no height, no length that where Jesus didn't come and reach me, even behind bars. Ain't that the good news? Isn't that the good news of Jesus Christ? We hear a lot about fake news and this and that, this channel, that channel, whatever else. But I think we need to start hearing a little bit more about the good news. And that's my assignment while I'm here today, ladies and gentlemen, to tell you about the good news of Jesus Christ, who is changing lives as he did over 2,000 years ago and still changing lives today during this time. In Luke 4, verse 18, it says, Jesus has been anointed to preach the gospel, the good news to the poor, and to preach deliverance to the captives. That was definitely me. I was a captive, indifferent to sin and darkness or whatever else, but Jesus met me right there. I was 18 when the Lord set me free from those offenses, but I didn't find a local church nor keep my promises or vows, and diverted back to my old ways. This caused me to be in and out of jails, facilities, prisons, which led to 54 arrests and 4 times in closed security high max prisons. During my time in darkness, I remember fighting deputies, catching simple battery charges and aggravated assault charges at the Clark County Jail, which is located in Athens, Georgia. I even set the jail on fire, which in the early 90s caused me to be shackled to a bunk in a toilet in my cell. Shortly afterwards is when I first met this guy who was a deputy at that time by the name of Ira Edwards, then who later on became sheriff of Clark County Jail, who is also a mentor to me today, a close friend of mine's now. I know him and his family and his wife and children. He preached the gospel, the good news to me again. I will never forget when I was in the cell, this cell called H5 that didn't have a bunk, sink, nor toilet in it. I remember that I would be looking through the flap midway down the door. that stayed locked until food trays came through it, or you would have to literally stick your hands through it with your back to the door to be handcuffed, to be transported to go take a shower, to go to the medical department, or to even be transported to court. I couldn't wait until our Edwards shift came on so I could peek through the flap on the door. Even though it was locked, it had a little small space, and sometimes I would sit there for 30 minutes on up to 2 and 3 hours till his shift came on. This one particular time, I went to the classification office. He had this big book sitting on the desk along with the Bible, and I asked him, I said, "What's that book?" He said, "Jamie Scott, you don't know nothing about that. You don't want to know what that is. You don't know nothing about it." And I asked him that again. And he began to tell me, he said, "Well, this is a concordance. It references scriptures from the Bible, and it kind of lets you see the footnotes and things." The book had given him the opportunity to minister the good news to me in spite of my present situation that I was impacted by this man of God that day, who would always be a part of my testimony. God always has a plan if we allow him to lead. If there's nothing else that I can leave you all with in this room today, is let God lead you in all that you do in this challenging work. You know, heavy is the crown that carries, that places on the head. And I know your work gets challenging at times. I know that you're advocating, and sometimes you're like, man, what am I doing here? Am I making an impact? It feels like you're getting pushed by these different things. But I guarantee you, if you allow the Lord Jesus Christ to come in and cast all your cares upon him with whatever you're dealing with, it'll get a little bit lighter. I love how Ezekiel 11:19 in Ezekiel chapter 11, verse 19, God says he will give us an undivided heart with a new spirit and a change of hearts from a stone of flesh. Now, some of the people who helped me along the way are some good old boys. You know, I've had different people to help me along the way, but I've had some good old boys wear camouflage shirts and hunting gear, and I've had some people who along the way who have helped me, who may have had some dreads or whatever else. You know, it kind of really makes me look at life through not just one set of lenses, but a broad set of lenses. When I think about me being this guy from the hood, and then having some of my best friends who drive 1500s, carry guns, loves the Lord, life and liberty, as well as this great state of Georgia. Y'all are my type of folks. Y'all are my type of folks. And I can't say it enough, Georgia. Thank you. Thank you, thank you. If I was saying this for the rest of the state of Georgia, and for everyone that you fight for, and for everyone that you're doing this work for, I believe that we can all find common ground somewhere to say thank you for the work that you do. Today, I'm a person in long-term recovery who has worked for the Department of Behavioral Health, Developmental Disabilities, and the Georgia Council of Substance Abuse. I'm a co-founder of PLR, which is called People Living in Recovery Incorporated. I teach a curriculum at the county jail called Self-Control as a paid facilitator. And this the same jail I set on fire. Don't God have a sense of humor? You mean to tell me that he'll take a guy like me and clean him up and still say, okay, we want you to go back into the same jail that you set on fire. We're going to get him to pay you and pay you real good. And we ain't going to just give you just one way to go in or one way of access. I'm going to give you dual access. You're going to go in there as a paid facilitator and also a religious volunteer to preach hope to the next person that was bound up like you. So when you're sitting up in these places and you're doing different things with legislative bills or whatever else, and know that it makes a difference. It makes a difference in some type of way. In closing, the verse that I like to close with is Revelations 12 and verse 11, when it says, they overcame him, which is the enemy, by the blood of the Lamb and the word of their testimony. by the blood of the Lamb and the word of their testimony. The best message that I can ever preach, wherever they may call me to. I've been to D.C., I've been in the White House or whatever else, but I always share the goodness of God, and I always let people know, because everybody in here have someone that's an addiction in your family, or know a friend that is struggling with this, or if it's mental health challenges. But God is able. I'm proof in the pudding. Let us bow our heads and pray. Father God, I thank you for giving me this great opportunity to stand before great women, men and women in this house today. It is only you that can open up doors that no man can shut, and shut doors no man can open. Father, I pray for wisdom for our state leaders. I pray for discernment, and to let their leadership to be under the guidance of the Holy Spirit as you lead them, and you guide them, and you protect them, and you comfort them, and you direct their paths to live towards peaceful lives. In the name of Jesus Christ, amen. Okay, let's turn toward the
Allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America, and to the republic to which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Doorkeepers will unlock the doors. Members may greet the chaplain in the South Anteroom. And the chair recognizes Chairman Hogan, the chair of the Committee on Information and Audits.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your Committee on Information and Audits has read the journal of the previous legislative day and found it to be correct. And furthermore, Mr. Speaker, I hope to arrive to my death late, in love and a little drunk. Atticus Stephen Saines.
Mr. Chairman, let me ask you though, is that really a respectful way to be talking about a man that could be your son-in-law?
Mr. Speaker, let me assure you that that will never happen.
Chairman Hogan, the chair of the Committee on Information and Audits, reports that the journal of the previous legislative day has been read and found to be correct. Is there any objection to the confirmation of the journal? The chair hears none, and the journal is confirmed. The clerk will read the resolution establishing the order of business for the day.
Mr. Burns, 159 moves following be established as the order of business during the first part of the period. Unanimous consents. Introduction of bills and resolutions. First reading and reference of House bills and resolutions. Second reading of bills and resolutions. Reports of standing committees. Third reading and passage of uncontested local bills and resolutions. First reading and reference of Senate bills and resolutions. Morning orders.
Is there any objection to the adoption of the resolution establishing the order of business for the day? The chair hears none, and the resolution is adopted. First reading of bills and resolutions, the clerk will read.
House Bill 1603 by Representative Yurda, the 152nd, a bill to be entitled Act to amend an act to create the city of Sylvester.
Intergovernmental coordination.
House Resolution 1127 by Representative Oliver, the 82nd, a resolution creating a House Study Committee on Developmental Authorities.
Governmental affairs.
House Resolution 1128 by Representative Wilson, the 80th, Oliver, the 82nd, Shannon, the 84th, Cannon, the 58th, and Evans, the 57th. A resolution recognizing and commending Stacy Fox.
Rules.
House Resolution 1147 by Representative Donahue, the 30th, Kelly, the 16th, Parsons, the 44th, Benton, the 31st, Washburn, the 141st. A resolution urging the President of the United States to consider the current geopolitical tensions.
Energy, Utility, and Telecommunications.
House Resolution 1148 by Representative Thomas of the 21st, Carson of the 46th, Cantrell of the 22nd, and Ballinger of the 23rd. A resolution urging Cherokee County and the cities of Woodstock, Canton, Holly Springs, Ball Ground, and Waleska.
Intergovernmental Coordination.
That completes first readers.
Second reading of bills and resolutions. The clerk will read.
House Bill 1599 by Representative Powell of the 32nd, a bill relating to licensing provisions regarding professional counselors, social workers, marriage, and licensed therapists. House Bill 1604 by Representative Houston of the 170th, a bill to amend an act to consolidate all the laws chartering the city of Adel in the County of Cook. House Bill 1605 by Representative Werkheiser of the 157th, a bill to amend an act to grant a new charter for the city of Claxton. House Bill 1606 by Representative Clark of the 147th, Blackman of the 146th, Dickey of the 140th, Williams of the 148th, Mathis of the 144th, a bill to authorize the assessment and collection of a technology fee by the Probate Court of Houston County. House Bill 1607 by Representative Bentley of the 139th, a bill to provide a homestead exemption from Taylor County School District ad valorem taxes. House Resolution 1083 by Representative Ballinger of the 23rd, McDonald of the 26th, Jaspers of the 11th, a resolution honoring the life of Mr. Lloyd James Grogan, dedicating an intersection in his memory. House Resolution 1084 by Representative Cannon of the 58th, Thomas of the 39th, Mitchell of the 88th, Smyrie of the 135th, Beverly of the 143rd, a resolution honoring the life of Mrs. Jovita Moore, dedicating a road in her memory. House Resolution 1102 by Representative Leverett of the 33rd, Ralston of the 7th, Dickey of the 140th, Laricki of the 169th, Jaspers of the 11th, resolution recognizing Representative Thomas Allen McCall and dedicating a road in his honor. House Resolution 1103 by Representative Newton of the 123rd, Jones of the 47th, Lott of the 122nd, Burns of the 159th, Cooper of the 43rd, and others. Resolution urging the Biden administration to remove its veto and reapprove Georgia's Medicaid expansion waiver. House Resolution 1104 by Representative Cannon of the 58th, Thomas of the 39th, Smyrie of the 135th, Beverly of the 143rd, Paris of the 142nd, resolution recognizing the Black Music and Entertainment Walk of Fame and dedicating a road in its honor. House Resolution 1105 by Representative Bonner of the 72nd, Mathiette of the 73rd, resolution honoring the life of Mr. Huey Lawrence Bray and dedicating a road in his memory. House Resolution 1124 by Representative Burchett of the 176th and Corbett of the 174th, resolution honoring the life of Mr. Kenneth Ken Jason Bennett and dedicating an intersection in his memory. House Resolution 1125 by Representative Burchett of the 176th and Corbett of the 174th, a resolution honoring the life of Colonel Frank Norton, dedicating an intersection in his memory. House Resolution 1126 by Representative Evans of the 57th, Holland of the 54th, Schofield of the 60th, and Jones of the 25th, resolution creating the House Study Committee on Motor Vehicle Equipment and Public Safety. Senate Bill 632 by Senator Anderson of the 43rd, a bill to amend an act to provide a homestead exemption from certain Rockdale County School District ad valorem taxes. Senate Bill 633 by Senator Mullis of the 53rd, a bill to amend an act providing a new charter for the city of Ringgold. Senate Bill 635 by Senator Strickland of the 17th and Jones of the 10th, a bill to amend an act placing the sheriff, probate, judge, clerk of the Superior Court, and tax commissioner of Henry County on an annual salary. Senate Bill 637 by Senator Brass of the 28th, a bill to create the City of Sonoya Building and Facilities Authority. Senate Bill 638 by Senator Anderson of the 43rd and Strickland of the 17th, a bill to create the Rockdale County Public Facilities Authority. Through second readers.
Reports of standing committees. The clerk will read.
Representative Stevenson, 164th District Chairman of the Committee on Economic Development and Tourism, submitted the following report. Mr. Speaker, your Committee on Economic Development and Tourism has had in consideration the following bills and resolutions of the House and the Senate, which instructed me to report same back to the House. Following recommendations: Senate Resolution 135, due pass by committee substitute. House Resolution 1026, due pass. Senate Bill 142, due pass by committee substitute. Respectfully submitted, Representative Stevens of the 164th District Chairman. President Martin of the 49th District Chairman of the Committee on Higher Education submitted the following report. Mr. Speaker, your Committee on Higher Education has had under consideration the following bill of the Senate and instructed me to report same back to the House. Following recommendations: Senate Bill 379, due pass. Respectfully submitted, Representative Martin of the 49th District Chairman. Representative Jan Taggersley, the 160th District Chairman of the Committee on Intergovernmental Coordination and Locals, submitted the following report. Mr. Speaker, your Committee on Intergovernmental Coordination and Locals had under consideration the following bills of the House and the Senate and instructed me to report same back to the House with the following recommendations. House Bill 1600 do pass. House Bill 1601 do pass. House Bill 1602 do pass. Senate Bill 560 do pass by substitute. House Bill 797 do pass by substitute. Respectfully submitted, Representative Jan Tankersley, the 160th District, Chairman. Representative Stration, the 104th District, Chairman on Committee on Judiciary, submitted the following report. Mr. Speaker, your Committee on Judiciary has had under consideration the following bills of the House and the Senate, instructed me to report same back to the House with the following recommendations. Senate Bill 276 do pass by substitute. Senate Bill 359 do pass by substitute. Senate Bill 364 do pass by substitute. Senate Bill 374 do pass by committee substitute. Respectfully submitted, Representative Stration of the 104th District, Chairman. That completes the reading of reports of standing committee.
We're going on now to the local calendar. This House will come to order. Going on to the local calendar, third reading and passage of uncontested local bills. One bill on the local calendar relates to homestead exemption and requires a recorded two-thirds roll call vote for passage. If there is no objection, we will vote on the local calendar as a whole with a recorded vote. Hearing none, it is so ordered. The clerk will read the local calendar.
House Bill 1600 by Representative Williams, the 168th City of Flemington. House Bill 1601 by Representative Corbett of the 174th Eccles County. House Bill 1602 by Representative Jaspers of the 11th Murray County. Senate Bill 560 by House Substitute by Senator Jones of the 10th DeKalb County. House Bill 797 by Substitute by Representative Gaines of the 117th Athens Clark County.
Is there any objection to the previous question being ordered on the local calendar? The chair hears none. The previous question is ordered. Is there any objection to agreeing to the report of the committee, which was favorable to the passage of the bills? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Shall these bills now pass? All those in favor of the passage of the bills on the local calendar will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no, and the clerk will unlock the machines. What purpose does Representative Fry rise?
Parliamentary inquiry.
State your inquiry.
Mr. Speaker, isn't it true that this is a substantive way that we can provide relief to the homeowners in Athens-Clarke County for the rising costs of housing?
If the gentleman so states, I know that he cares very much and is very knowledgeable about that issue. Have all members voted? Have all members voted? If so, the clerk will lock the machines. On the passage of the bills on the local calendar, the ayes are 153, the nays are 5. These bills, having received the requisite constitutional majority, are therefore passed. What purpose does Chairman Tankersley rise?
Mr. Speaker, I rise to make a motion.
State your motion.
I move we immediately transmit the local calendar to the Senate.
Chairman Tankersley has moved that this House immediately transmit the bills on the local calendar which were just passed to the Senate. Is there objection? Is there objection? The chair hears none, and it is so ordered. All right, now we're going on to morning orders. Chair will remind members that by rule we have a total collectively of 10 minutes. We're not going to assign a particular time to any member, but at the end of 10 minutes the microphone will be cut off. Chair recognizes Representative Al Williams for a morning order.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This morning, I have the Commanding General of Fort Stewart and the Command Sergeant Major. As we speak, 3,800 troops from Fort Stewart are in West Germany in case a line between us, NATO, and Russia is crossed. We're prepared. These folk are ready to go into danger. They are heroes, and we appreciate their sacrifice and their willingness to stand up for democracy here in America. I'm going to ask those that would like, I'm going to bring the general out. Love for you to take a picture with him if you would. Thank you so very much, and let's remember Ukraine. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Representative, I think the general will be in the ante room to greet people and for photographs. Chair recognizes Leader Burns, Chairman Hitchens, and Chairman Parrish for a morning order.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Good morning, colleagues. Today I want to make sure that you, if you need him, to visit the doctor of the day down in the medical aid station. But more importantly, I hope you'll go by and say hello to Dr. John Odom. He is a physician from Savannah, Georgia. John was born and raised in South Georgia. He's a country boy. He attended the medical school in New York City, of all places, and he completed his general surgery and residency there before he joined the Army and then came back to Savannah. Dr. Odom is a renowned general surgeon in Southeast Georgia. He's also a great friend to our public safety officers all across this state, as he was to then Chairman Hitchens when he was in that business. He's a managing partner at Metro Surgical Associates in Savannah. He's a former chief of staff and board member of Candler St. Joseph's Hospital in Savannah. Really what's important to this body, Dr. Odom has dedicated his life to making sure that folks have medical care around this state. And with that in mind, he's partnered with us to create, he's the director of the Rural Surgical Fellowship Program that is supported by this body. He has surgeons at Wayne Memorial Hospital in Jessup, Effingham Health System in Springfield, Scriven County Optum Medical Center in Sylvania, and Coffee Regional Medical Center in Douglas. He's quite a surgeon. He takes the Hippocratic Oath very seriously. If you need help, you need someone to visit with, or just go down and meet Dr. Odom. He's quite an individual, and I think you'll be blessed by meeting and talking to him. Thanks to my colleagues for welcoming Dr. Odom. Thank y'all, and I yield well, Mr. Speaker.
Chair recognizes Representative Carter for a morning order.
Good morning. Thank you, Speaker Ralston. Good morning, colleagues. I know that we are closing out Women's History Day, and I wanted to acknowledge this phenomenal young lady. She was here with us yesterday. Her name is Samantha Ward. She is an entrepreneur, and she recently opened a spa in Union City. And so I just want to share a little bit about her. She graduated from the International School of Skin and Nail in Roswell. She created this exotic nail concept, and she looks at nails and she considers it a masterpiece. I had to hide my hands from her. But along her journey, here are the people that she's had an opportunity to take care of their nails, and some of these people you may actually know their names. Ruben Studdard, R&B singer. Dondria Kelly, Kelly Price's daughter. Jonia Roll, Quave's mother, Etna. Da Brat, Erica Badu, Prima Donna, Sierra Glam Shop, the City Girls, and more. This young lady was inspired by her mother after going into a security business, and her mother told her to do something that makes her excited, and then she quit her security job and went into this business, and she calls it Sun Envy, where she makes every person that sits in her chair important and receives a star-studded world-class experience. For those of you who are on social media, go and look up Sun Ivy, and when you see these nails, they're absolutely a masterpiece. Something that I'm not quite ready for, but I'm gonna grow up to it. And so would you all join me in congratulating this young lady, Samantha Sun Envy Kimberly Ward, who has killed the game in the nail industry as a young person, as an entrepreneur. I'm just really so proud of her. And since the yellow light isn't on yet, she is also, oh wait, I just want y'all to remember we have lunch in what we call spolitics, so we want to take politics to the spa. I yield the well. Because we didn't have a...
Chair recognizes Representative Frazier, Representative Hughley, and Representative Al Williams for a morning order.
Good morning. Thank you, Speaker. I stand here today with my healthcare colleagues as we recognize March 2022 as Rare Kidney Disease Awareness Month with a House Resolution 1051. March is recognized as National Kidney Month, and it is an important opportunity to raise public awareness, understanding of rare kidney disease such as APOL1, a mediated kidney disease. APOL1 is a genetic variant, accounts for much of the excess risk of chronic and end-stage kidney disease for persons of African descent. APOL1 explains the disproportionate rate of kidney disease of people of African ancestry. Although African Americans make up 13% of the United States population, 32% of all those with kidney failure and 35% of those with end-stage kidney disease. APOL1 is a mediated kidney disease, is driven by genetic factors and is severely undiagnosed. So today we stand here increasing public awareness and understanding of the genetic causes of rare kidney disease, which leads to early diagnosis and care for some of our most vulnerable populations. We recognize March as Rare Kidney Disease Awareness Month in the state of Georgia. Thank you.
Chair recognizes Representative McLeod for a morning order. Representative McLeod. No, you signed up for a morning order. We're not recognizing farewell speeches for those who are running for other offices. You wave? Okay. Okay. That completes morning orders. All members of the House will please take your seats. All members will please take your seats. All members. Chair recognizes for a special order Representative Erica Thomas.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It is my honor to stand up here in front of my colleagues and give my farewell speech. It has been 8 years that I've been a state representative, and I first ran for office at the age of 24 years old and was elected at the age of 25. I want to tell a little story as I begin. I remember a senator convincing me to come to the Capitol. You've got to come. You've got to come. You'll have a good time. This is for you. You got to do this. You have to do it. And I was like, I'm not coming to the Capitol. I'm not. It's intimidating. I'm not coming all the way up to the Capitol. So I remember about 10 years ago, I came to the Capitol for the very first time, and it was sine die. The bells were ringing. People were arguing. I think I might have saw somebody get into a fight. It was a madhouse here. And I looked around and I said, oh, this is me. I can do this. This is for me. And ever since that day was the first day that I started with as an intern with Senator Lester Jackson. And it was amazing because he taught me so many different things. And we traveled so many places. And I just appreciate him for seeing a young woman and seeing the potential of what I didn't even see in myself. So I thank you so much, Senator Lester Jackson, for everything. I want to thank the speaker. And, you know, even though I'm of the opposite party, you know, I want to say that one thing about the speaker is that people may think that he's intimidating, but he keeps it real, okay? And I've had questions, or I want to talk about my bill, or I want to talk about something. People say, oh, well, come to me or come to me. I have went right to the speaker, and he's never said no. Now, he might have said no to the stuff that I want to get done, but he never said no to talking to him. So I appreciate you so much for that, Mr. Speaker. Even though I've been the vice chair for the last 5 years, and the speaker has never recognized me as vice chair, he always says State Representative Erica Thomas, but I still love you. I am just very happy and excited about the next venture. It was crazy because I remember when I got my committees the last couple of years ago, and at 30 years old, the speaker put me on the retirement committee. I didn't know why he would do that. I also want to thank Betsy and Camille for their hard work and for what they do for our press releases and our communication, and they make us sound really, really good on paper, for sure. So thank you so much, Betsy and Camille. I really want to thank my husband. He's standing up in the back, and for everything, yes? For everything that he has done. It's so hard to have someone, your significant other, that loves politics and loves it just as much as you do. He's written my speeches before. He stayed up all night helping me to do my research before I come in about bills, gives me opinions. And I just thank you for always being there every single day and even taking care of our children. I call him Daddy Daycare. I want to recognize my two daughters, Dakota Adeyemi and Adenike Adeyemi. These little women are troopers. I am so proud of Dakota. During the pandemic, she started her own online school, teaching kids Black history all across the world. She's been on TV all across the world, dakotaschool.com, that's a plug. And she has really been doing some amazing, amazing work, and I really love you for everything. And I know that one day you will be a state representative, okay? I also want to thank some of my colleagues. I want to thank the leader, James Beverly. We have really come a long way from the beginning, before I was a state representative and I was just an intern. And I've confided in you, you've confided in me. We've argued, we've fought, but in the end, you know that you are my brother. And even when I make it big in the world, I'm definitely not going to change my number, I promise, okay? I also want to thank the Dean of the House for his knowledge and his wisdom, and it's ever flowing. You know, anybody that comes to you, you'll give them that wisdom, you'll give them that knowledge. You don't hide it back from any freshmen, anybody that's been here for a long time, and we really, really appreciate all of the knowledge and the wisdom that you have bestowed upon me and so many people before me. Thank you so much, Dean. Now I'm going to wrap it up. It's been 8 years, but I'm not going to be a politician for long, so I'm not going to talk too long. I'm very excited about my new career in the TV production. I've always had a series of goals. One of those was to be a state representative, and another one was to be Oprah. I don't know if I'm gonna do that, but I want to make sure that in my next venture that I shine a light on so many stories that are left untold. And getting a TV deal with a major network was amazing, but what's amazing is that I'm going to be able to tell people's stories about women and people that have done so many amazing things throughout the world that have been left untold. And so I'm very, very excited about that. And just know, even though I am leaving, guys, I will be up here, and it might be with the camera shining on you guys. So as I wrap this up, I have 2 more people that I want to say something about. Representative Park Cannon and Representative Marion Paris. They are like my 2 best friends. We talk for hours on the phone almost every single day. We read bills together. We talk about legislation. They have really been there for me, and I'm not gonna tear up. They have really been there for me through everything. And a lot of people say in the House, in politics, you have no friends and you have no enemies. And I believe that for a very, very, very long time. But with these 2 women, they have always been there to lift me up every step of the way. And I'm gonna miss you all, and I hope that you all are gonna miss me too. I thank everyone in this house, because this house is like none other. We sit beside Democrats, we sit beside Republicans. I sat beside Secretary of State Raffensperger for a couple of years, and we went back and forth about different bills, or I'd argue with him, don't vote for this, or he argued with me, don't vote for that. But at the end of the day, we were still friends. And so that is what's so important about this house. I want you all to make sure that if you don't remember anything that I said in this speech today, is to remember that no matter what happens on this House floor, no matter how much we argue, no matter how much we fight, I do believe that most of us love each other. Thank you so much.
While we're kind of settling back in, someone just made me aware, and I wanted to mention to the members that today is National Vietnam War Veterans Day. Let's give our Vietnam veterans a big hand. All right, we're going on now to the rules calendar. Going on to the rules calendar. The clerk will read the caption to Senate Bill 586.
Senate Bill 586 by Senator Gooch, the 51st, Dugan, the 30th, Watson, the 1st, Anna Duarte, the 31st, and others, to be entitled an act to amend Part 2 of Article 3 of Chapter 4, Title 32, the official code of Georgia Annotated relating to exercise by counties of power to contract for road projects generally. This bill has referred to the Committee on Transportation. That committee recommends that this bill do pass.
Chair recognizes Chairman Jaspers to present the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. For those of us on the Transportation Committee, we have nicknamed Senate Bill 586 the Kevin Tanner bill. When Chairman Kevin Tanner was the Transportation Chairman, he saw this process and its effectiveness in Georgia DOT projects and wanted to use this tool also at the county level. What this bill does is allow county governments to utilize the same process as GDOT does when it comes to design build projects. GDOT and counties, if they get to do this, puts out a bid through the RFP or request for project proposal process. The bidders are pre-qualified to build certain projects. The contractor is responsible for the project from the design to turning over the project to the county. The county under this method can select a builder that will both design and build the transportation facility, bridge, structure, or road. Counties must adopt by resolution the procedures that are to be followed concerning pre-qualification, advertisements, criteria for this award. I think you'll see a lot of detail in the bill on how this will work fairly for contractors and citizens in their very competitive bidding environment. The Georgia Highway Contractors Association works with this process across Georgia right now and is in favor of this bill. In the end, it's about counties obtaining significant savings in project delivery, in dollars, and times. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. That's my bill. I'll be glad to answer any questions if there are any.
You have no questions.
Thank you. Ask your favorable consideration.
Is there any objection to the previous question being ordered? The chair hears none. The previous question is ordered. Is there any objection to agreeing to the report of the committee, which was favorable to the passage of the bill? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Shall this bill now pass? All those in favor of the passage of the bill will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no, and the clerk will unlock the machines. Have all members voted? Have all members voted? If so, the clerk will lock the machine on the passage of Senate Bill 586. The ayes are 160, the nays are 0. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed. Clerk will read the caption to Senate Bill 496.
Senate Bill 496 by Senator Burke, the 11th, Watson, the 1st, Hillary, the 19th, and others, to be entitled an act to amend Article 2, Chapter 16, to Title 45, the official code of Georgia Annotated relating to death investigations, so as to require a medical examiner's inquiry when a pregnant female dies and an inquest. This bill I refer to the Committee on Health and Human Services. That committee recommends that this bill do pass by committee substitute.
Chair recognizes Chairman Cooper to present the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Ladies and gentlemen of the House, I bring you Senate Bill 496. This is a tool as we continue our march to reducing the number of maternal mortalities in our state. There in our law already are a list of issues that must be reported to a medical examiner or a coroner when somebody dies. This adds another one and explains one. It adds one to do with women that are pregnant but do not die from a car wreck or some other injury like that, that must be reported to the coroner or the medical examiner. And also it explains what we mean by an unintended person that has died, and that is one that hasn't been seen by a physician in the last 180 days. If a pregnant woman dies, or from either one of those, unattended or the fact that she's pregnant, it requires that you tell the medical examiner or the coroner in the area, and they must report that to the regional perinatal center for further inquiry. And those perinatal centers are as defined and identified by our Department of Public Health. Here again, trying to identify why a mother died, before delivery or during delivery or immediately or after or in the 365 days post-delivery. That's what the bill does. If there are questions, Mr. Speaker, I'll be glad to answer them, or I'll go ahead and yield the well and ask for your favorable consent.
You have no questions. Is there any objection to the previous question being ordered? The chair hears none. The previous question is ordered. Is there any objection to adopting the committee substitute? The chair hears none. The committee substitute is adopted. Is there any objection to agreeing to the report of the committee, which was favorable to the passage of the bill? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Shall this bill now pass? All those in favor of the passage of the bill will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. And the clerk will unlock the machines. Have all members voted? Have all members voted? If so, the clerk will lock the machines. On the passage of Senate Bill 496, the ayes are 156, the nays are 5. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed. Clerk will read the caption to Senate Bill 534.
Senate Bill 534 by Senator Kennedy, the 18th, Miller, the 49th, Dugan, the 30th, Gooch, the 51st, and others, to be entitled an act to amend Title 50 of the Official Code of Georgia annotated relating to state government, so as to provide certain procedural requirements and considerations for the adoption of rules by state agencies. This bill having referred to the Committee on Governmental Affairs, that committee recommends that this bill do pass by committee substitute.
Chair recognizes Chairman Gaines to present the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Proud to present Senate Bill 534 this morning. And what this measure does is it continues to provide a good environment in Georgia for our charitable organizations. We are fortunate in Georgia to have over 5,700 charities in our state, and we've provided a great environment for these charities to operate, and this measure will continue to make sure that Georgia is a great place. We have so many charities that do such great work, and so this measure ensures that if there are additional regulations placed on those charitable organizations, that the General Assembly would also have input into that as well. And so it's a simple measure that will continue to make Georgia a great place for charities. Mr. Speaker, I'd be happy to answer any questions if there are any.
You have no questions.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield the well and ask for the body's favorable consideration.
Is there any objection to the previous question being ordered? The chair hears none. The previous question is ordered. Is there any objection to adopting the committee substitute? The chair hears none. The committee substitute is adopted. Is there any objection to agreeing to the report of the committee, which was favorable to the passage of the bill? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Shall this bill now pass? All those in favor of the passage of the bill will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no, and the clerk will unlock the machines. Have all members voted? Have all members voted? If so, the clerk will lock the machine on the passage of Senate Bill 534. The ayes are 165, the nays are 0. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed. Clerk will read the caption to Senate Bill 345.
Senate Bill 345 by Senator Mullins, the 53rd, Hatch the 50th, Anderson the 24th, Anna Duarte the 31st, and others, to be entitled an act to amend Chapter 1 and Title 50 of the Official Code of Georgia Annotated relating to general provisions regarding state governments so as to prohibit state and local governments from mandating vaccine passports. This bill having referred to the Committee on Health and Human Services. That committee recommends that this bill do pass by Rules Committee substitute.
Chair will remind members that the Rules Committee imposed a 1-hour limit on debate on all the measures on the calendar today, and that will be allocated 30 minutes to each side, not to include the initial presentation. Chair recognizes Chairman Bonnie Rich to present the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, ladies and gentlemen of the House. I want to reiterate that today is National Vietnam Veterans Day. My second father, my children's papa, served in special forces in Vietnam. Thank you, Papa John, for your sacrifices in fighting for the ideals of a free society and for your service to our country. I bring to you this morning Senate Bill 345. Vaccination for COVID-19, like all health care, is a personal, deliberate decision to be made by an individual if he or she chooses after consultation with his or her doctor. That's what I did, and it's what my husband and children did as well. We all four opted to vaccinate and to receive the boosters. We did so after weighing all of the factors, recognizing we weren't completely confident that there would not be negative consequences. We still are not confident that there won't be negative consequences down the road. But we ultimately determined we were more concerned personally with contracting COVID than we were with the possible side effects. My point is that that was our decision to make. We have friends, very intelligent, responsible friends, who have made different decisions in their families. This is a decision that every Georgian should be able to make on his own. To that end, Senate Bill 345 will prohibit any governmental agency in the state from requiring the COVID-19 vaccine. There are exceptions in the bill for our healthcare workers and some state university employees who could be required under federal law to receive the vaccine. Without the protection that this bill affords, Georgians could be excluded from exercising their rights and privileges to participate in governmental functions, such as appearing here at the Capitol to speak on pending legislation, participating in our court system as plaintiffs or defendants, appealing property tax decisions, renewing their driver's licenses, attending school, and accessing any other government service. This bill will have no effect on private businesses. This is in keeping with Georgia's long-standing respect for the rights of individuals and private businesses to decide for themselves, and is also consistent with the United States Supreme Court's decision in January of this year that found that Biden's administration's sweeping requirement on many of our nation's businesses went too far. People who claim a variety of political ideologies consider mandates to be an unacceptable infringement of personal freedom and choice, despite having a personal belief in the safety and necessity of the vaccine. This is about being American, not Republican or Democrat. Compulsory vaccination is an interference with the human right of bodily integrity, which is part of the right to private life enshrined in our American principles. As recognized by Northwest University health expert Dr. Tina Tan, I'm going to quote here, mandating that a vaccine be received is hard to enforce and may backfire as people feel that the mandate is heavy-handed. Mandating a vaccine also may make certain persons less likely to receive a vaccine and more skeptical about the safety and effectiveness of it. It is important to maintain public trust and not force a vaccine upon a person until the person has a chance to make their own decision as to whether they will get the vaccine, end quote. Similarly, Johns Hopkins professor Nancy Cass stated, quote, public health rarely starts with a mandate as plan A. In general, public health will do exactly what is happening with COVID vaccines, which is to try to help the public understand why a vaccine is effective, how a vaccine is safe. If it turns out that doing all of those things leads to sufficient coverage, mandates aren't needed. You're able to maximize this ethical goal of respecting people's autonomy and freedoms and maximize the benefits that we need from a public health perspective. If that doesn't happen, that's when mandates come into play. I'm continuing to quote here. Mandates in general depend on there being a really large and consequential public health threat, and that less intrusive measures have not been sufficiently effective. All of these things are essentially justifying why it's okay to overrule the wishes of someone who doesn't want to get vaccinated, end quote. Ladies and gentlemen, we are here today. Our economy is thriving. Businesses in Georgia have survived. They're providing for their families, they're providing goods and services for us. We're taking advantage of it. Our children are in school. That is proof that our less intrusive measures have been sufficiently effective and that mandates are nothing more than a political overreach. I urge you to vote yes for this bill. Mr. Speaker, I will stand for 2 questions.
You have some questions. Do you yield?
I do.
Chair recognizes Chairman Parsons to your left for a question.
Thank you, Speaker. Lady Yield.
I will.
Isn't it true that in the beginning of your address you spoke of your stepfather, I believe, who served in Vietnam?
Yes, I did.
Well, isn't it true, and I just want to make sure that I understand this relating to military, isn't it true that U.S. military are required to take vaccine as long as it's approved by the FDA? Is that not true?
That, I believe, would be a federal mandate, and that's not what we're discussing here.
So my question then is related to our National Guard. I assume that they would still have to take, they would still be required, because they can be activated in the national service, they would still be required to take the vaccine, if that's the requirement for the U.S. military. Is that correct?
I would have to consult with counsel to give a definitive answer on that, because I do believe that there are some state employees who are required to have the vaccine under federal law. So my educated guess would be that you are correct, but I couldn't say with certainty.
All right, I appreciate you answering the question. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Speaker, I know I have others who have signed up to speak for the bill. If I will answer one more question, and then I will yield the will.
Chair recognizes Representative Anulowicz to your left for a question.
Thank you. Does the lady yield?
Yes, I do.
Have there been any bills proposed this session that would mandate the COVID-19 vaccine?
I'm not aware of any, but I am aware that there are local governments in our state that are mandating the vaccine, and that's what this bill is going to address.
Mandating the vaccine for citizens?
Yes, and for employees.
May I ask one more question?
Sure.
Would this, right now in his executive powers, the governor actually has the ability to mandate vaccines. in a public health emergency. Would this change that power?
No, it would not at all. His executive power and emergency power would continue.
So the governor would still have the power to mandate vaccines?
Yes,
if
he
so
would.
chose. Thank
Yes.
you.
Thank you. Mr. Speaker, I will yield the well.
Lady has yielded the well. We have others who have signed up to speak on the bill. The chair recognizes Representative Rebecca Mitchell to speak to the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I want to start this conversation with an acknowledgement that this particular space is hard. And I want you to know I don't feel like I have all the answers. And if you are very certain, it's worth asking what makes you that certain. Because public health measures like vaccination are hard, they are. We need to balance the combination of the protection we get from the vaccines ourselves, in addition to our responsibility to our community on one hand, with our feelings that we are independent agents and the space that is uncomfortable because medicine and public health has not earned trust from all Georgians. And while that is a historical truth, it is also a lived truth for many folks in this chamber and outside of it. And our lived experiences do matter. We cannot step into the shoes of other members, and we can't assume we know how folks got to where they are currently. I actually expected this conversation we're having today was going to happen well before session started. And I reached out to two groups of folks to increase my understanding in this space. The most important group I reached out to is the folks who are going to be most impacted by our precedent-setting decisions, and at the same time whose trust in government and public health has not yet been earned. I asked in every space I could, as many times as I could, if you know me and you've been in a meeting with me where there was an opening, you've heard me bring up the value of vaccines to our communities. And I asked folks several open-ended questions. I said bills that are going to make our communities less safe by starting down a pathway of codifying anti-vaccine rhetoric are going to come up. What made you decide to value the individual and community safety of vaccinations in the first place? What is the common space between folks like me, who've studied infectious disease dynamics, and the impact of vaccines on health in populations, and those who get vaccinated but who have real hesitancy? And the answer that was reflected back to me over and over again is simple: community care. We want our kids to live in safe spaces. We want our parents to be as safe as they age. We want folks who are immunocompromised to be able to live the same lives as everyone else. But what we're going to do here today is not with that value in mind. And I'm sure the amount of disinformation you will hear today is profound. I can repeat many of the claims. The specifics of those claims don't really matter, and the value of debunking a single claim is not important, because as one point of disinformation is debunked, another will rise. And the most powerful element of emergent of doubt is simply pointing out that there are things that remain unknown, because that is always true. I don't know that the sun will rise tomorrow, but I'm pretty confident. I don't know how tall my children will be, but I can take a guess. I don't know if I will get an accident today on my drive home, so I'll wear my seatbelt. Uncertainty is always present. And in science, we quantify it. In disinformation, it's weaponized. I had a lobbyist unrelated to health walk into my office one day and share in conversation that he'd been one of the first generation to receive polio vaccines in the US. I want to share a point that we of my generation did not forget, because we've never lived in a system that forced us to confront it. Several thousand children in the US died every year of polio prior to vaccination. 48,000 people were hospitalized. And if you look at the statistics, the way I imagine you'll hear them presented today about COVID, that's around 0.05% of children who are infected with polio. The total number of children whose families did not bring them home from the hospital after a measles infection was 400 to 500 in the U.S. in the years immediately preceding vaccine introduction. Do not let anyone in this body tell you that children are supposed to die because they can make those lives turn into percentages with many zeros. Children are not supposed to die. While this bill preemptively targets a single vaccine, the speeches you're hearing today and the rhetoric destabilize the security of all vaccines for all Georgia communities, and that impact will be inequitable. So I rise today in opposition to putting us on a pathway that we cannot course correct, on a path that erodes the community building efforts of those who are working so hard to develop a more equitable public health and community landscape, both from a community leader or activist perspective and from those within the realm of science. All of us have to come together, and we, right now with this bill, are making that space harder. Some actions, once taken, provide precedent that we will find impossible to undo. I ask you to join me in voting no. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I yield the well.
Chair recognizes Representative Drenner to speak to the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to first make some general observational comments about what I've heard from the well. First, the degree of polarization is directly related to the amount of time that is not allowed for debate on a bill. When people from the well acknowledge that no one is listening and no minds can be changed, think about how hard that is to establish credibility in a body that does not value discussion or dissent. All of us here should pause, especially women legislators who take the time to establish their subject matter expertise, emphasizing their academic credentials. With that said, I'm aware that my comments regarding the contents of Senate Bill 345 are lost in a vacuum of partisanship. But it seems important not to pass up the opportunity to learn from what the COVID crisis reveals about governance. Given the uphill battle that any policy faces when it targets community needs rather than policy or individual beneficiaries, there seems little chance that this pandemic has created a sea change in our public health system. It's clear that the political dilemma of public health is not fixable simply by replacing one chief executive or a party with another. The public health system itself focuses largely on community-wide disease prevention and control, rather than the treatment of individuals. Many of the nation's greatest advances in lowering death and disease rates resulted more than a century ago from immunization, sanitation, and other community efforts to slow or stop the spread of infections. For example, yellow fever, tuberculosis, or measles. The very effectiveness of these community-wide campaigns have made it possible for individuals to forget how deadly these diseases are for the policy shifts that have occurred. In other words, as the memory of epidemics faded, individual rights became much more important than collective responsibility. This great forgetting continues. Nobody wakes up in the morning and says, thank God I don't have smallpox. Or thank God my water is potable. Or I had COVID and it wasn't that bad. Until the need to prepare for, and if possible, prevent the spread of a communicable disease means that we pass Senate Bill 345. Our strategy is neglect, panic, and repeat. I understand that the nature of our political ideology resists putting scientific expertise into the driver's seat. Do what I say because I'm the expert sits uneasily within a system that claims to operate democratically, especially one in which individualism predominates. The resistance to mask wearing and vaccination are examples of how claims to scientific truth can be taken as a threat to individual liberty. Since Alex de Tocqueville visited America in the early 19th century, many have noted that governance practices, particularly at the local level, could temper individualism. But his hopeful forecast, as illustrated in this measure, has not panned out. In my mind, what is required is living in the truth. In the current era, with the blizzard of lies, deception, fakery issuing from social media, living in the truth has a quaint air about it. Nevertheless, it is a stance that anyone, especially legislators, should take up. What I'm asking each of you to do today is live and speak within the truth. For me, it means using my voice. I'm not staying silent. I am lifting the curtain on what could be considered a last mile problem and voting to support local public health efforts. As I yield the well today, I ask that you vote no.
Okay, Chair recognizes Representative Saines to speak to the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I won't spend a lot of time speaking about the technicalities of the bill because Chairwoman Rich did a great job discussing its need, but I think it's worth noting the underlying premise of this bill. President Ronald Reagan said it best when he said, where government has gone too far is deciding it can protect us from ourselves. And this is what this bill is about. It's not about being pro-COVID-19 vaccine or anti-COVID vaccine. I, like many of you, have decided to make that choice. Not one member in this chamber was required or mandated to receive a COVID-19 vaccine. We were trusted that we had the wisdom to know what was right for us, what was right for our family, and this bill simply submits that same right, that same courtesy to citizens of this state. I would say this would be an aptly named bill if we called it the Constituent Confidence Act, because it relies on the wisdom of those who voted us in to have the wisdom to make the right choice, and some of us seem to be lacking in that confidence. I appreciate those who have spoken to this bill, but I wrote down a quote because it seems it's a pretty scary notion. Do what I say because I'm the expert. That is not something that comforts me coming from the government. I appreciate your time, and I yield the will.
Chair recognizes Representative Camp to speak to the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and good morning, colleagues. It's 10 minutes till 12, so I know everyone's probably stomachs growling at this point, but to me this is a very important issue. In my household, my mother and father-in-law lived during COVID. And my father-in-law at age 97 made a choice not to get the COVID-19 vaccine. He did so because he had cancer, and he knew that he was going downhill. And I don't know if he did it because he wanted that shot to go to someone else, or if he knew his time on this earth was very short. But he made that decision himself, by himself, with his wife. Now, my mother-in-law, on the other hand, she wanted to get the COVID-19 vaccine. And again, that was a personal choice for her. I think that, we kind of look at this sometimes as a collectivism, as Representative Drenner said, or an individualism issue. And, it is. It's your body. COVID-19 vaccine passports create a system that would penalize people with religious or philosophical objections, as well as those who simply choose not to take the vaccine for whatever reason. I did take the COVID-19 vaccine, but as an individual, I would be very offended if I decided to go to my building and zoning office to get a building permit, and they asked to see my card before I walked in the door. Why? Because as an individual, I should be able to make choices for myself regarding my health care. And while the argument for public health is a true one, and we do have vaccines, and I'm thankful for the vaccines we have. I'm thankful for the fact that polio is not rampant, nor smallpox. But the reality is, no one was asking any of those individuals to walk around with a card to say they got a smallpox vaccine to go inside Kroger or anywhere else. To me, this is an individual issue. I feel that we all should have the ability to make our own choices, and that's why I'm in favor of this bill. If you look at line 27, even though Chairman Rich did a fabulous job, it says no agency shall require proof of the COVID-19 vaccine for any person as a condition of providing any service or access to a facility, issuing any license, permit, or other type of authorization, or performing any duty as such agency. This bill does have a sunset. There is a way to back out of this. If we find that there is another issue, then simply we let the sunset happen and it goes away. But our numbers have been declining. People have gotten the vaccine. And the truth of the matter is, in the future, there could be something else. We need to give individuals the right to make choices, and they will trust public health more. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Chair recognizes Chairman Mathiak to speak to the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I too rise today in support of Senate Bill 345. This is an important issue, and it's important to my constituents in the counties that I represent. I've been contacted by many of them, and it's very important to the Georgians all across our state. 19 states have mandated vaccines for state workers. It includes Washington State, Oregon, California, Nevada, Colorado, New Mexico, Minnesota, Wisconsin, Illinois, North Carolina, Virginia, Maryland, New York, and Massachusetts. Large cities like New York, Washington, D.C., San Francisco, New York City, Boston, Philadelphia, Chicago are some of the cities that have mandated vaccine passports. As of fall of 2021, 21 states have banned the vaccine passport to some extent. These states are Idaho, Utah, Arizona, Arkansas, Montana, Wyoming, North Dakota, South Dakota, Kansas, Oklahoma, Texas, Iowa, Missouri, Alaska, Mississippi, Indiana, Tennessee, Alabama, Florida, and South Carolina. I submit to you that Georgia's values are much akin to those of the latter than of the former. I'm proudly voting for this bill, and I urge you to do as well. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I yield the well.
Is there any objection to the previous question being ordered? The chair hears none. The previous question is ordered. We have a minority report, and then we have the chair's time, 20 minutes each. The chair recognizes Representative Mitchell for the minority report.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. First of all, let me just say I'd like to start off with some truisms. The fundamental responsibility of government is to protect its citizens. And the two inventions that have sustained and prolonged and certainly protected human life are the purification of water and vaccinations. So it's puzzling in some respects that we find ourselves in this posture today. The debate over the last 2.5 years has become polarized primarily because of political utterances due in at least part to a declining trust in our government leaders. Faced with this reality, what would some government leaders do? Some would sow even more distrust. I submit to you that distrust itself is infectious. For instance, some, perhaps even in this room, believe vaccines are part of a vast government conspiracy to exaggerate the dangers of the virus for some nefarious purpose. A statement attributed to Oliver Wendell Holmes, the legal scholar who served as Associate Justice of the U.S. Supreme Court, goes, "My right to swing my fist ends where your nose begins. You ought not have the right to infect me." You see, if you contract the virus, your family, your friends, coworkers, classmates, indeed all those you interact with are placed in jeopardy. If in fact the virus could only affect those who would choose to go unvaccinated, I would not be before you in opposition today. In fact, I'd be for this legislation. This kind of reminds me of the motorcycle helmet mandate that some sought to end in Georgia and other states about a decade or more ago, if you'll remember. But some of the insurance companies got smart. They declared if you chose not to wear a helmet and you injured yourself or worse, and it could be proven that the damages sustained could have been prevented had you worn a helmet, then you would be responsible for paying for your own care. Not surprisingly, we don't hear too much about that issue today. Likewise, I think that would really be personal responsibility, good conservative government in this instance. You choose not to get vaccinated, you become infected, you would be responsible for your own care, not the insurance company, certainly not the state. So make no mistake about it, if this proposal becomes law, there will be some Georgians, perhaps even in your own district, that will surely die. They would have otherwise lived if we required vaccinations. That is uncontroverted. History tells us the same argument being made by the proponents of this bill was espoused when the government mandated vaccinations for diphtheria, polio, measles, mumps, rubella, tetanus, and others. You would be hard-pressed to find credible mainstream voices who share that belief against mandating vaccinations for those diseases today. I suspect the same will be true of this vaccination effort in the very near future as well. The fundamental responsibility of government is to protect its citizens. SB 345 marks the first time that Georgia would ban any vaccine from being required for public school participation, just as the vaccines are being made available for this age group. Now, if all of that didn't move you, let me give you the words of others that might. Some of you may be familiar with Marcus Lamb, the noted conservative TV and evangelist and prolific anti-vaxxer. As a result of being infected with the virus, told his family on his dying bed, please go get vaccinated. I don't want you to go through what I'm going through. H. Scott Apley, Republican official from Texas who regularly made anti-vaccine and anti-mask comments online, shortly after posting his last critique of vaccinations, he passed away after being infected with the virus. His wife would later say her husband regretted his stance on vaccinations in his final days. John Scott Parney ran the Quincy Diner in southern Michigan. Not only did he oppose vaccine and mask mandates, he defied the lockdown orders in effect and kept his restaurant open. Parney, who previously served in the Marine Corps, became infected and thus began a long battle to overcome the disease. During his battle, when he was able to talk, John shared with his family that he would be getting vaccinated as soon as he was able, because that battle was worse than any training he endured in the military. Unfortunately for him, he never recovered. I could go on and on and on with examples, but let me just give you one last one. For it was he who said, "So everyone go get your shot." 95%, maybe even more than that. It works incredibly well. I would recommend it. I got the shot and the booster. It's a great vaccine. It's a safe vaccine. Those words were for former President Donald Trump. I urge you to join me and help us save lives by opposing this measure. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Okay, we now have the chairman's time. Chair recognizes Chairman Cooper for the chair's time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I relinquish part of my time to Representative Dr. Mark Newton.
Chairman Cooper has yielded a portion of the chairman's time to Chairman Newton. Chair recognizes Chairman Newton.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Just a few dates, 53 years, 10 years, 20 years. Those are the amount of time we worked on smallpox before it was first mandated, 10 years for polio, and frankly, for polio, it started as an injection. There may be somebody in this body who got the injection, but it was latter changed to the oral polio. DPT is a vaccine. Diphtheria, pertussis, tetanus is one that's given today. But now there's a Tdap, there's a DTaP, there's about 4 different versions because we keep learning new things. Now, just because vaccines had a long period to where they were proven before we mandated them in children, which is something that keeps getting brought up about our 5-year-olds, in 2 months, 4 months, 6 months, things like that. Just because we had a lot of study doesn't neglect the fact that this COVID pandemic was a once in a century thing. It was something unusual, just like 1919 and the flu outbreak. It was something that needed a record pace to do incredible work, and I think that's what happened. We did get a vaccine that is incredible. I saw firsthand, like many others in healthcare did, the dramatic difference between the illnesses early in the disease and even the ones we still get now when they're positive and may have to be in the hospital, but nowhere near the respiratory distress that there was earlier in this. What I want to make sure about this bill that we understand is, even though this vaccine hasn't had all the amount of decades sometimes that were available for the other ones, it's still a fabulous vaccine. I've had all mine, my wife has, many of us have, and I've frankly given hundreds of them. And I think it's an amazing step forward that we've been blessed to have, and it has changed the course of this illness to where now it's much more of a mild illness, let's say, than anything we saw in the previous years. What I want to make sure of is that you can be incredibly pro-vaccine, which I am. I'm pro-COVID-19 vaccine. I've got a new 1-year-old grandson who's gotten all his vaccines. All our kids have. You can be very pro-vaccine and still support this bill. This bill is simply more about asking an adult, or requiring an adult, to show papers, to show proof of a vaccine that is, granted, it is a new vaccine, less than a year and a half old, but requiring them, before they can access government services, any needed government service, whether it's a building permit, which is help with unemployment, whatever it is, any government service, but for any level of government to require one of your constituents to show a piece of paper prior to being able to access, pay their taxes, even appeal their taxes, all the government aspects. I think you can be very pro-vaccine, like I am, and I know the chair lady is. You can be very pro-vaccine, including pro-COVID-19 vaccine, and still support this bill for those citizens who need to access their government services at any level of government. I hope you'll vote yes on it and be pro-vaccine and pro-liberty for people to be able to access the needed government services. I yield the will.
Chair recognizes Chairman Rich for the balance of the chair's time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I want to start by making sure that the record is clear. There has not been any anti-vaccine rhetoric coming from this well. In fact, quite the contrary. I believe that you have heard from every one of us who has spoken in favor of this bill that we have, in fact, received the COVID-19 vaccine ourselves, and that we believe it was the right decision for us, because that is our decision. What has been happening here from people, from opponents to this bill, is they are conflating the principle of whether vaccines are good and whether the government should mandate them. Those are two separate issues. Something else that is quite clear from what we are living right now is that we know in Georgia we do not need a vaccine mandate for our life to go on. The helmet and the seatbelt analogy are completely off base. Putting something into one's body is very different than wearing a helmet or a seatbelt. Again, this is an issue of liberty. It is an issue of freedom to choose one's own health care and health issues. And for that reason, ladies and gentlemen, I request that you vote in favor of freedom and liberty and vote yes to Senate Bill 345. Thank you.
The previous question has been ordered. Is there any objection to adopting the committee substitute, or the substitute offered by the Committee on Rules? The chair hears none. The Rules Committee substitute is adopted. Is there any objection to agreeing to the report of the committee, which was favorable to the passage of the bill? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Shall this bill now pass? All those in favor of the passage of the bill will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no, and the clerk will unlock the machines. What purpose does Representative Sharper rise?
Parliamentary inquiry.
State your inquiry.
Is it not true that this would be a great bill if we had this problem going on in the state of Georgia? The thing about it, it doesn't affect the private businesses, but it does affect the public. But however, because there are state agencies that we actually have the rule over, in a sense, the governor, that we haven't been having this problem of people being turned away at any of those public places that we're mentioning inside of this bill. So with that said, like I said, it would be great if we needed it, but now we're spending a lot of time, even session time, on this bill that's really not needed because it's not a problem that we're having right now in our state. Thank you.
What purpose does Representative McLeod rise?
Parliamentary inquiry.
State your inquiry.
Is it not true that 35,416 Georgians are dead today from COVID, and those are loved ones and not numbers?
What purpose does Chairman Setzler rise?
Parliamentary inquiry, Mr.
State
Speaker.
your inquiry.
To the gentleman's question earlier, isn't it true that this state's not done this generally, but other states have? And we want to make sure this practice does not happen in this state as it has in others. Isn't that true, Mr. Speaker?
If the gentleman so states. All right, have all members voted? Have all members voted? If so, the clerk will lock the machine on the passage of Senate Bill 345. The ayes are 99, the nays are 67. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed. What purpose does Chairman Rich rise?
To make a motion.
State your motion.
Mr. Speaker, I move that Senate Bill 345 be immediately transmitted to the Senate.
Chairman Rich has moved that Senate Bill 345 be immediately transmitted to the Senate. Is there objection? There is objection. Does the lady move?
I move.
Lady moves. All those in favor of immediate transmittal will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no, and the clerk will unlock the machines. Have all members voted? Have all members voted? If so, the clerk will lock the machines. On the lady's motion for immediate transmittal, the ayes are 99, the nays are 67, and this bill is on its way to the state Senate. Chair recognizes Representative Alexander for an announcement.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Today is our last and final day for the Women Caucus. We will meet in room 216, lunch will be served, and we will get on a Zoom call to listen to our speakers. Thank you.
This House will be in recess for lunch until 1:30 p.m. 1:30 p.m.